And the star of Stage, Screen, and Partridge Family. He sold over 25 million records, and his newest is Old Trick, New Dog. David Cassidy. Hey, Dave. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Wow.
Ah, yes.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. It's a hopped-up crowd tonight, I tell you. Jerry Springer fans. All right, let's get to the issues, folks. We've got important stuff to discuss. There was a story in the paper today. This really caught my eye. A California woman who is on welfare is suing a hospital here because she was denied an epidural. Now, if you don't know what an epidural is, it basically numbs the body from the waist down when a woman is having a baby. Okay, well, she's on welfare. It costs about $500, this epidural. They wouldn't give it to her without the cash. So she is suing them. And the question is, if you're on welfare, and by the way, she was having her 5th child. She's now pregnant with her 6th. If you're on welfare, and you're...
Was this not a Medicaid or Medicare
Well,
issue?
it's not covered by the welfare health insurance, which is Medi-Cal, okay?
Medi-Cal.
They don't cover it. They don't say you can have as many kids as you want on welfare and we'll also pay for you not to be in pain. Is that right?
What do you get for, I mean, you have to just bite a bullet or something? What do you get for Medi-Cal?
Bite the bullet, yeah. You gotta, I mean, it's, women did it for thousands of years.
So are we to assume the anesthesiologist said, sorry, because you're on Medi-Cal, we're not going to give you the shot?
That's what he said.
See, I think that's wrong, Bill, because, I mean, women are, it's a barbaric enough procedure, just giving birth. It can be very, very painful.
Barbaric?
It is barbaric often. To have that to give birth without a pain management assistant, that is something that is barbaric for a woman to have to go through. And it's also, there are benefits to the baby.
So pain is barbaric to you?
Pain is barbaric. If you're in childbirth and you have no anesthesia and you don't have an epidural, it can be a horrifying experience for a woman to have to go through.
Apparently it was for this woman, and it's sort of like saying if you're coming into the hospital, we'll sort of take you halfway through, but then you're on your own because you don't have enough money. That just seems
so
totally
we're going to give health care to rich people, and poor people are going to have to suffer, is basically
And that's what's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I completely agree, but...
A certain amount of suffering, I think, is in order if you are, you know, excuse me, out your 6th kid, on welfare. I mean, life is not painless, and actions have consequences.
Are you suggesting, though, that we should monitor how many children people have? That it's not acceptable? At some point, we'll pay for the first 3 epidurals, but we won't pay for the next 3? I mean, I think that's wrong.
I
Is the
wouldn't
government
pay for
gonna...
3, no. 3's a lot.
Stop it, too.
You know, you're also punishing the baby by not allowing...
Nope.
By not allowing the pregnant woman to have the epidural, because there's an advantage to epidural, because the baby will not be born with narcotics in his or her system if an epidural is given to the pregnant mom.
That's not true, first of all.
True.
No, it isn't. And second of all, there are other less expensive ways to apply anesthesia. She wanted the best. She's on welfare. She's had 5 kids that we're all going to pay for to clothe, feed, and probably jail.
Well, that's why I was asking, did she... What was the alternative they offered her? I mean, did they offer her other anesthesia?
I don't know, but what did women do before? I mean, epidural is something about 20 or 30 years old. I think women used to go down by the river, have a baby, slap some mud on it, and go back to work in the field.
And some of them still have babies that way, and they shouldn't have to have that way if there's a better way. Even the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists say that pregnant women should be able to have an epidural on demand because there are benefits both to the mother and to the child. And I don't think they should be punished just because they can't pay for it. Why should they have to suffer
Why should someone who can't pay for it be having a 6th child?
But
why don't they have a right to have a child?
You're dealing with the problem at the wrong point in the scale. It's sort of like all of this has to start much earlier with trying to get people not to have so many children. Once they do, how can you be inhumane in the way that you deal with them?
I don't think it's inhumane. Why is it inhumane to do something women have done for centuries?
Well, I mean, you're talking about great old days when they went down and slapped mud on it. Those were not great old days. I mean,
those were not the good old days.
Well, that's how I was born, right?
Are you saying that the poor should have to have abortions?
Because they're poor?
That's
Is that
quite a
what you're
leap,
saying?
Gloria.
It's not a leap.
That's not really what I
If you're
said,
going to say
was it?
that they must suffer a lot of pain when they give birth because you will not
Well,
provide them with the painkiller
I don't know how
the
much
doctors
pain.
say
This
they
woman
should have.
today who had the baby on the internet did it to show, she said, women, that it really is not that big a deal to have a baby. I'm sure it is painful.
I've had
But
a baby, and it's a very painful experience until the anesthesia is administered.
Well, I'm sure it certainly can be, and it certainly boils down to the individual. I mean, you know, some women have a much easier time than others, and for those who don't, they should have the best possible anesthesia that's available.
But that's easy to say here, and I'm sure it would get applause in a lot
Sure
of
it
places.
is, because I'm a man.
Right, but,
You know.
but I mean, at the end of the day, you know, when you start piling up all the things you want the government to do, somebody at the end of the day does have to pay for it, and it winds up being you. With
Yeah, I'm all happy to do that. You know
because
what?
you're rich, but they're not.
No, I'm happy to give. Okay, I am.
Right.
No, it has nothing to do with how much money. I'm happy to give a percentage of. I would much rather see a greater percentage of what I pay in taxes go to assisting people who need the care and who can't afford it than to building, you know, bombs and on what we're spending in the military.
And anesthesia is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
That is not a necessity. Bombs are a necessity, and believe me, when Saddam Hussein releases anthrax in the LA subway system, you will probably
As
change
if we
your
don't
tune.
have enough to protect ourselves from Saddam Hussein.
Well,
also,
I have to take a commercial. I'm so sorry. We can come back to this, but we got to take a break. All right. Now let's talk about this issue, also in the paper recently. Mrs. Dawn Bixler of Lincoln, Nebraska, is being sued for getting a girl pregnant.
Why are you looking at me? I had nothing to do with it.
Did you say Mrs. Dawn Bixler?
Don't keep
I said
glancing over
yes.
here, pal.
Okay.
That's right. Mrs. Dawn Bixler is being sued for getting a girl pregnant.
First of all, she's married to a man named Dawn, I guess, so that's Mrs. Dawn Bickler?
Mrs. Dawn, her name is Dawn.
Her
Bear
name
with
is
him
Dawn.
for a
Okay,
second.
and she is being sued because what happened is her son got he's like 16, got his 16-year-old girlfriend pregnant.
Being
and
sued by the other parent?
by the other parent,
At their house.
saying, hey,
By the girl's parent.
by the girl's parent saying, hey, you should have known that your son was getting my kid pregnant. Do you think that's kosher to sue the parent?
Do you know if the kids were openly sleeping together at this person's house?
Do I know?
The mother, the mother who's being sued. No. The mother who's being sued, was she aware that they were sleeping together?
Well, that's what they're claiming.
Okay.
They're
So
saying
let's-
you should have known.
Let's assume, oh, well, that becomes another question. Let's
Well, the
assume
question is,
that she knew. At what point is the parent's responsibility, other than to educate, and being a parent, I have to consider this now, although my son is 7. I'm not quite there yet. I hope not.
But he's a Cassidy.
Excuse me. I'm still recovering from that. You're rich and you can afford it. You're the one with a television series, pal. No, I just think at some point we have to just say the responsibility is, as an adult, is to educate our children about, and everyone, about practicing
So
safe sex.
can you sue this kid?
But I
But if
expect,
you're
I
dealing
expect
with-
what there's, I'm sorry.
At what point, though, does the mother have responsibility? Does she walk in, knock on the door every 15 seconds and go,
but-
here, are you
well,
in yet?
it's a lawsuit.
Here's
There is a
rubber.
difference.
You know, come on. I mean, at what point?
But I grew
You
up,
can't
I grew
police
up in
somebody.
the 50s, and there was no way you could have your boyfriend spend the night. This
Right.
happens a lot now. People would rather have their kids having sex under their roofs than
think
being
that's a
out in the
better idea.
backseat of a car. And
think
if
it's a better
in
idea.
fact these parents were cognizant of the fact that these kids were sexually active and didn't share it with the girl's parents, I think that there is kind of a problem there. I don't know about lawsuits, but
Well, but probably what they're suing about is who's going to take care of the baby, who's going to support the baby. They're probably not suing for psychological damages.
Actually, what they're suing for is the cost of the abortion. Because apparently the young girl decided to have an abortion, and therefore her parents are suing the boy's mother for the medical expenses incurred in that procedure.
It's a legal issue, and I guess that's probably
But
something.
should everything be solved in the court of law? Really is what
I
it
agree.
comes down to. This is a, you know, hey, your neighbor, you have a problem, you know, your tree is over my
well,
yard.
right,
How about just not
Your
hi,
boy is
we have
over
a
my
problem,
daughter.
instead of like
You just have a church bake sale for the abortion or something.
But I think, yeah, but
We're in a raffle.
I think what's happening here is the notion of parental responsibility,
Yep.
of trying to get parents to be more responsible for their children, so that if they know they could be liable in damages either for the cost of an abortion or for child support if the, if the baby is born, then they may decide that they have an economic incentive to tell their son or their daughter, hey, if you sleep with another person and that person becomes pregnant, then we're going to be economically on the hook, and therefore we don't want you to be doing that. You're not ready for that, and we're not ready for that.
To a raging hormone 16-year-old.
I was about to say, what are the consequences now?
They just want to get some. They don't. They're not thinking. I mean, how can you expect kids to be?
I mean, forget about just being 16. But what are the consequences now of this lawsuit? What happens to these two kids? Now, I mean, has anybody considered? Did the parents consider that perhaps? I mean, are they still together? Is their relationship going to be damaged forever? How does it affect these poor two kids who all they really want to do is be lovers? And I mean, what's so unnatural about that?
I wouldn't want money from someone who got my daughter pregnant, because that wouldn't mean I won.
Well, you're rich.
Meant
You can
I
afford
sold
it.
my daughter. But, all right, we got to take a commercial. Yeah, you got me. You got me. All right, Gloria, as long as you're here and you're our lawyer specialist, I always like to ask you about new laws that are coming up. Okay, now they want to pass one that says domestic violence changes from a misdemeanor to a felony if a child is present. In other words, if you beat your wife, it's a misdemeanor. If a kid sees it, if the child in your house sees it, that's a felony.
Yeah, and Bill, I think the audience is right to applaud because it's a great law. And you know what it really recognizes?
3 people applauded,
I'll tell you
Gloria,
why.
first of all,
I'll tell you why. Well, those 3 people were smart because, and I'll tell you why, because it recognizes that children who witness domestic violence in the home, who witness their mommy being beaten, are also being victimized. They are going to be emotionally hurt by that kind of witnessing of the event. And we have to protect children and let these guys know that we're serious about domestic violence, and they better not do it at all, let alone in front of the children.
At all is the point.
Yeah,
At all.
but a woman is beaten as much as she's beaten, whether the kids are there to see it or not. And, and it seems that every kid who's around domestic violence is aware of it. They don't have to be in the room to know that their mother gets beaten.
Yeah, sometimes they're in the other room. Yeah, sometimes they are. And sometimes they're in the other room hiding under the bed because they're so afraid. And then they're traumatized for it. They need counseling for years.
But they're no longer then witnesses to that violence. Where is the line? I mean, is the witness to the violence just someone who's in the house, or do they have to be in the same room?
Well, actually, in some states, if they even just hear it, they don't have to see it. It will also bump up from a misdemeanor to a felony.
But, you know, getting into felonies, I mean, it makes these hard and fast categories like in the drug laws where people get sent away for a lot of years on this just because it says it has to be a felony. Seems to me that you could take into consideration in the testimony that the kids were there, and the judge and jury would give a harsher sentence without complicating the law by, you know, throwing things into felony for the sake of teaching men a lesson seems to me, you know, laws can't cure human misery.
If he doesn't want complications, maybe he shouldn't beat his wife in the first place.
In the first place, Gloria, but you're making the other case. Every time you say, in the first place, you're making the other case, that the law already stands. Why does it need, it's like a hate crime. What does it matter? If a guy kills you, he kills you. That's wrong. What is it? We shouldn't be looking into somebody's mind as to why.
Well, but children are very special. They're very vulnerable.
No kidding.
They're at risk. They are innocent victims in all of this.
Yes,
and they are getting wounded.
Has nothing to do with what we're talking about or the
law.
law.
It has everything to do with it. They're innocent bystanders, and we have to let people know that they cannot engage in family violence because it is going to hurt their children.
That's actually the bigger issue, and the more important issue to me is that we need to do much more work in terms of education and how to communicate and how for adults and parenting. I mean, I think parents should learn. We're not given any training. You know, you're there and you have a baby. I never went to school for this. How do I deal with this?
You never went to school at all. You're on a TV show. All right, we have to take a commercial. I'm just kidding. We'll be right back. going to plug your album again because
That's the least you can do.
I was kidding you. You went to school, but when you're on a TV show as a kid, you
I
don't...
wasn't a kid.
Well, how old were you?
19.
19? I was
Yes.
still in school at 19.
Well, of course you were, because you flunked 3 or 4
And look how
times.
far you've come. On Sunday, you were on the cover of the LA Times Magazine. Congratulations.
Yeah, indeed.
You have arrived. It was a
Indeed.
great article.
So plug my album, let's go.
But back to hate crimes.
Well, can I say, make a general statement?
Yes, please.
It seems to me we've been talking about sending people a message by passing laws or by